Hello everyone and welcome back to more of the Labyrinth of Grisaia. In the last episode, Yuji and Asako went to the zoo. Yuji got a puppy, and Asako wanted to quit her job, her career, and JB was like, no, you can't do that. And she was like, well, watch me. And yeah. But Yuji tried to run away, but the little puppy, he was like, no, I can't leave the puppy. So he decided to stay. This marked the beginning of my rehabilitation period. Little by little I began to adjust to living with Asako and my dog in that isolated cabin. But one day, completely out of nowhere, Asako walked over to me and issued the following proclamation.
いいか、ユージ。ガキのうちは足が速い男がモテる。
Honestly, I wasn't sure why being popular with women was supposed to be important. But I was aware that I'd grown pretty weak physically, so I went along with the routine Asako proposed. Waking up at 5 AM every morning for a run around the mountain with my dog. Fortunately, I didn't dislike running in the first place. In fact, you could probably say it had been my only form of recreation for a while there. I ran at a steady rhythm, carefully establishing my pace and watching the scenery flow slowly by. After 5 kilometers or so, my body would beg me to stop. Still, I always pushed myself to go just a little bit further. By the time I passed the 8-kilometer mark, the discomfort faded away entirely. I felt as I could go as far as I wanted. Of course, I'd end up regretting it if I got carried away here. That feeling meant I'd hit my peak. Unless I headed home for now, I wouldn't make it back to the turning point. The rolling path I was using ran the circumference of the mountain for a total of 16 kilometers. It was a rough trail. Asako herself had made it by running through the woods when she was younger. Every morning I followed in her footsteps with John at my side. John's the name of the dog. What did I want to name him? Not John. Some other name. But it's a girl dog, which is funny.
よし、戻ってきたか。随分と早いな。ガキにしちゃ上等だ。 途中で近道したんじゃねえだろうな。
No.
まあ近道しようにも道なんてねえけどな。
Smile on her face. She's like, yeah.
間違ってもズルしようとなって思うなよ。うかつにも一直線に近道をしようとすればすぐに方向がわからなくなる。
On a small mountain like this?
嘘だと思うなら試してみろ。方位磁石を使っても構わんぞ。 ほら、見上げてみろ。頭上は厚い葉に覆われて、日の光も届かない。磁石を頼りにまっすぐ進んでいるつもりでも、岩や倒木を避けて進むうちに必ず迷う。そのまま 2、3 時間も歩いて、見慣れた道に出たと思えば、最初に分け入った道から200メートル先に顔を出した。なんてことはよくあることだ。もし本気で試すのなら、 必ず携帯電話か無線を持っていけ。迷子になった上に動き回られたら、さすがの私も必ず見つけ出してやるとは言えんからな。
I don't really doubt you, and I'm not planning on testing it.
そうしろ。この山自体はそうでかくはない山だが、たまにクマやイノシシが出るからな。
You have mentioned that before I went jogging?
なーに、めったに出やしないから大丈夫だ。それに、そのためにジョンを連れて走ってるんだろうが。
I don't know how effective John's gonna be against a bear. But to be fair, I did watch Fox and the Hound, so he could be harboring some deep bear-like tendencies. You're really casual about these things, aren't you?
お前は逆に。 もっと雑に生きた方が少しは人生楽しくなるぞ。
I didn't really give a damn what happened to me, which honestly seemed like a pretty casual attitude in its own right. But I cared even less about this argument, so I kept the thought to myself. Over the first few days of my new morning routine, I didn't encounter any bears. But I did notice a few tree trunks where boars had marked their territory, and mud wall where one had evidently rolled around to trap the parasites in its fur. So there really are wild boars out here. was a little unnerving, but I kept up my daily run with John anyway, so regaining my strength. Once I was more or less back to normal, Asako proceeded to throw me a new curveball my way.
よし、なんだお前、足の速さは一丁前じゃねえか。だったら次だ。
Stage 2?
いいか、ユージ。かけっこが速いやつがヒーローになれるのは小学生までだ。中学生になれば喧嘩の強い不良っぽい男がモテるようになる。
What kind of schools did you go to? Seriously, what was so important about getting girls in the first place? Who was I supposed to be getting out here in the middle of nowhere? Some mountain girl? Didn't make much sense to me, but arguing would probably be more trouble than it's worth. Okay, so what do you want me to do? When I offered this reflexive response, Asako quickly ripped off her jacket and tossed it aside.
We're
kind of jumping in this really quick, aren't we? This woman was seriously macho. Guys who get into fistfights with women aren't gonna be popular, you know. What? For an instant, I wasn't even sure what had happened to me. I hadn't been sitting flying like this since my time at Oslo's school, when one of the instructors had thrown me halfway across the training ground. A sharp burning smell prickled the inside of my nose. I had the sense of something melting inside my head. I'd almost forgotten what this felt like. God damn it.
つかみを切れないと悟った瞬間に痛みを抜いたか。お前、基本はできてるじゃないか。けど、耐えるだけじゃどうにもならんぞ。ほれ。
Did she forget I went to terror school?
細っこい腕しやがって。力がないなら相手の力を利用しろよ。ほら、押すぞ。踏ん張れ。
Looks like someone needs a pair of anchor arms.
なあ、そうやって踏ん張ってる相手の力を利用すんだって。こんな感じで。どうしたほら。私は力なんか入れてないぞ。お前が勝手に転んでるんだ。わかるか？
Yeah, I get the idea. Of course, understanding in theory didn't mean I could compete. Given her skill, the difference in physical size and strength was just too much to overcome. Still, the casual way she tossed me around was kind of pissing me off, so I began trying pretty seriously to make her regret it. But the woman wasn't just bigger than me, she also had long limbs that made it hard to get in close and grapple. On top of that, her style of hand-to-hand combat was a strange mismatch of techniques, so it was all but impossible to get a read on her. If you can't take them by crushing their head, try to at least do some damage to their extremities. Imagine a wall on your right. Swing your right arm up with all your body weight behind it. Hey, you brought this on yourself.
やるじゃねえか、ユージ。お前にもうちょっと体重があったら、今のはマジでやばかった。
Are you satisfied yet? Just stop. I hate this sort of thing.
んだこら、勝ち逃げか？ふざけんな、ボケ。これ。いいか、ユージ。お前は何も分かっちゃいねえな。お前、力と暴力の区別がついてねえだろ。
What difference is there?
正しく使えば力。間違って使えば暴力。そして正しいか間違いかを決めるのは己自身。持っていれば必ず使わなければいけないというわけでもない。力を使わないこともまた威力。すべては志ってやつよ。なあユージよ、 本当の力ってのはな、チンピラが持つ刃物とは全く別のものだ。男は例えば弱者を脅威から守るとき、己が生き様を貫くとき、全てをかなぐり捨ててでも戦わなければならないときが男には必ず来る。そんなとき何ができるかで男の進化が試されるんだ。わかるか？
I don't even want to understand. Violence is violence.
バカだな、めは。そうだな。じゃあバカなおめえにもっとわかりやすく例えてやる。例えばそう、惚れた女が心底困った事態に直面した時、何もしてやれない自分が悔しかねえのか？力がなければ動けなくなった女を背負って逃げてやることもできねえだろうが。
A real man would do something before it came to that.
生意気なことを言うじゃねえか。けどな、世の中そんなにうまくいくことばっかりじゃねえってのはお前が一番よくわかってるだろうが。男ってのはそんな時のためにこっそりと牙を研ぎ続ける生き物だ。覚えておけ。
Ow. My doggy, come to save me. Again and again, she smacked me and wrestled me to the ground. Yanking my arm up behind me, she pressed her knee into my back until the air was forced out of my lungs. It was a struggle just to breathe.
どうした？ほれほれ、男ならピンチを楽しめよ。心が折れれば一気に負けるぞ。簡単に諦めるな。どんなに打ちのめされても心が折れなきゃ喧嘩は負けじゃねえ。どんなに絶望的な状況にあっても諦めなければ必ずチャンスはある。力だけじゃねえ、頭も使え。使えるものは何でも使え。ほらどうした？もっと頑張れよ。
John!
てめえ、犬を使うんじゃねえよ。卑怯だぞ。
You're the one who told me to use anything I can. Get her, John! In the end, no matter how many times I challenged her, I never did manage to beat Asako without John's help. It was honestly pretty humiliating. I got frustrated enough to try more or less anything, but no matter what, I just couldn't get the upper hand. Of course, it wasn't as if beating Asako in a fight would have meant anything, really, so there was no real reason to keep trying, but that felt like sour grapes thinking, and I couldn't shake a lingering sense of irritation. Decided to outsmart Asako somehow, I began to watch her like a hawk for some sign of weakness. But before I could find one, she went ahead and made another absurd proclamation, as she is wont to do.
いいか、ユージよ。多少バカでも喧嘩が強いやつがモテるのは中学生までだ。高校生になったら今度は頭のいいやつがモテるようになる。
Not this again. After all that about training my body and developing my willpower, now she was suddenly telling me to spend more time studying? Just so you know, JB already helps me study, and I'm doing fine with my correspondence school courses.
優等生のお返事だな。学校の成績イコール頭の良さか？あんなもっさり女に勉強を教わってるから、そんなダセえ価値観に染まるんだボケ。
Okay, so, are you smart yourself, Asako?
当たり前だろ。こう見えても私は本が読めるんだぞ。
Well, anyone could read a book, but can you understand it? Wow, very impressive.
お前今、私のことすげえバカにしただろ。
Well, I do think most Japanese people who got through middle school can read books just fine. Come to think of it, though, you actually do spend a lot of time reading, don't you?
だろ。こう見えてインテリなんだよ、私は。
Okay, I don't know about calling yourself an intellectual, but I guess I'll roll with it, just to make my life a little easier.
言っておくがな、お前が先生と崇める JB なんかより、私の方が頭いいんだぞ。
Really? If we're talking about books, I'm pretty sure JB's read plenty herself.
確かに。でも、 あいつは読むだけだ。私は読んだ後、本で得た知識を実践で確かめる。
Well, I don't know how hunting whales is gonna help me in the real world, but... In other words, when you finish a fighting manga, you try to imitate the hero's special move?
違うつの。あ、いや、そう違わなくもないか。例えばそう、家庭菜園の本を読めば、私は読後に実際に家庭菜園を作る。本で得た知識が実際に役立つかテストをするわけだ。
Oh, I think I kind of understand what you mean. You know, when I was little, I used to read my sister's science magazines and try out some of the experiments myself, for better or worse.
つまりはそういうことよ。本を書くような偉い先生がこうだと言ったら、それを丸ごと信じて疑わない JB と、自分で試して結果を得るまで納得しないこの私。どっちが有識者かって話よ。
Yeah, I get it, okay. My big sister was the same way. She always used to say that experience is the highest form of knowledge. I can't remember how many times she told me to try it out and see what happens.
お前の姉ちゃん天才か?
In a way. Everyone said she was, ever since she was little. She got pretty cranky when people said to her face, though.
なるほどな。お前が変なところで妙に端っこいのはそれが原因か。
Slick?
まあ、軍ではおおむねずる賢いとか、油断のならないやつって意味だ。
Okay. The army?
なあ、そんなことはどうでもいい。とにかく、人生とは経験が全てだ。経験の伴わない知識なんて、童貞が語る女の話に等しく、虚しい記憶でしかない。
That seems like a pretty extreme argument in its own right.
まあ、とにかく本を読め。そして気になったことは試せ。それが生きた知識となって、お前を生かす糧になる。読みたい本があれば言え。それが漫画だろうと構わない。いくらでも買ってやる。好きなだけ読め。満足するまで読め。
Penthouse form? No? Okay.
本っていうのは著者の生き様そのものだ。他人の人生が詰まってる。そして気になったことを試せば他人の人生を自分の中に取り入れることになる。まさに人生丸儲けってやつだ。
Okay, well, I always used to read the books my sister had finished, so I guess I'll just read whatever you're done with, Asako.
まあ、とりあえずはそれでいいか。私は JB みたいに人に物を教えるってのが苦手だ。こんな風にしかお前に何か教えてやることができない。
Maybe I should go to a real school? Maybe?
それでも何かお前の役に立つのならそれが一番だ。お前はバカにするかもしれないが、本が読めるってことは素晴らしいことなんだぞ。もっと人生を楽しめよ。読書ってのは人生の糧だ。
Okay. As of that day, I was explicitly allowed to read any of the books on the shelves in Asako's room. Most of these were practical how-to books, but every once in a while a novel or two that JB had brought over would be mixed in. I worked through classic mysteries, popular bestsellers, new books from famous authors, and science magazines for young adults that we subscribed to through JB. For a while there, I've spent pretty much all my free time reading, you know, occasionally studying up practical experiments based on some detail that caught my interests. After a while, I realized that Asako's analogy hadn't been that silly after all. It really was like stepping into someone else's life, and by absorbing new experiences and ideas, I was slowly expanding my knowledge of the world. At this point, I'd settled into something of a routine. When I woke up, I'd go out for my daily run around the mountain, with my dog, of course. After that, I'd use the rest of the morning reading books as JB assigned as part of my classroom curriculum, and spend the afternoon with Asako, learning practical skills such as hand-to-hand combat techniques. It's like I'm in the army or something. When I made this particular complaint, Asako grinned, muttered true enough under her breath.
問題ない。お前一人で100人の兵士と戦えるように育ててやるさ。
and made me a truly absurd promise. Of course, at that point, I still didn't have any idea what line of work Asako was in.
ちなみに聞くけど、その当時のあなたから見て、私ってどんな仕事をしている人に見えたの?
Well, let's see. You were always wearing nice suits, so I guess I pictured you working for a foreign IT company or something. I'm not really sure, but for some reason I was pretty convinced you were an ambitious career woman.
じゃあ、Asakoのことはどう思っていたの?
Well, I don't want to speak ill of her or anything, but she was always hanging around the cabin, and when she did leave for work, it seemed pretty random. Half the time she'd come back drunk. You know, for a long time I thought she was a pachinko pro or something equally shady.
まあ、ヤクザな仕事って意味では、あながち間違ってはいないところが少し悲しいわね。
Come to think of it, this was just about the point where I'd started getting curious about what Asako did for a living. Kusakabe Asako. That was the name of my current foster parent. I didn't know her age, didn't ask. She'd probably have told me if I asked, but honestly wasn't interested. At a glance, it didn't seem like she'd even hit 30 yet, but something about her arrogant attitude and crude, aggressive, masculine language made her seem oddly jaded for someone her age. This might sound a little rude, but it felt like she was older than her years in a lot of ways. I guess I would have classified her as the sort of person who's beautiful until they open their mouth. In any case, I didn't know much of anything about Asako, even though we'd been living together in that cabin for quite some time. There can be something appealing about a woman of many secrets, but in Asako's case, one mystery in particular kind of stood out. Specifically, her occupation. She seemed to pass most of her time hanging out around the cabin all day long. In the daylight hours, she'd drink booze and watch TV in her underwear. When she got sleepy, she'd nod off on the spot. It was like watching a polar bear at a zoo. Or a really lazy college student. But every once in a while, she'd get a phone call and tell me she was going to work and then head off down the mountain by herself. At the earliest, she might come back a few hours later. At the latest, she'd sometimes be gone for 2 or 3 days at a time. Whenever she did get back from one of these jobs, she'd bring a huge amount of groceries and everyday goods with her, and promptly resume her polar bear lifestyle. I was a kid who didn't know much about the world, but even to me, it was pretty obvious Asako wasn't working a normal job. At the very least, she wasn't a full-time employee working at some respectable company. Asako had never explained what exactly she was doing on those days she left the mountain, probably for good reason. But every once in a while, she came home injured, so I had a vague idea it might be something kind of dangerous. Putting it all together, her general line of work seemed relatively obvious. It was probably a really tough way to make a living, true. She did spend most of her time in a ratty little tank top and cargo pants, lounging around on the sofa and guzzling beers. Or chomping away at a chocolate bar while reading books, but I couldn't exactly bring myself to criticize her, given the circumstances.
なんだ? さっきから人のことジロジロ見やがって。
Oh, I was awestruck by how beautiful you are. It's nothing.
なんだよ。言いたいことがあるならはっきり言えよ。
I know probably a thorny subject, but what do you do for a living, Asako?
Huh? JB に作文の宿題でも出されたのか?
Nothing like that. I was just thinking you've never really mentioned it.
そういやそうだな。私の仕事か。お前、なんだと思う?
Are you a pachinko pro?
お前な。
No? Was I wrong?
違うよ。つか、なんでそう思った?
Well, you don't go to work every day. You tend to just wander off and then come back randomly with a bunch of chocolate bars.
こりゃ、お前、あれだよ。
When I pointed this out, Asako ejected the chocolate bar she'd been gnawing on from her mouth with an expression of mild embarrassment. And sometimes you come back injured, right? I guess I thought you were getting into fights with gangsters or something.
違うよ。私の仕事は公務員だ。
I knew it wasn't something as romantic as that. Are you a garbage collector or something?
違う。公務員だ。
Oh. Asako, I don't think that means what you think it means. Hold on, I'll go get a dictionary.
持ってくんな。言葉の意味は分かってるし、使い方も間違っちゃいねえよ。
Alright, calm down. But a civil servant, that's someone who works for the country or a local government, right?
そうだよ。私のクライアントは国だ。私も JB も国から出る給料をもらって仕事をしている。
Oh, I can understand that in JB's case. I mean, she's always wearing a suit and everything.
同じ職場でも、あいつはホワイトカラー、私はブルーカラーなんだよ。わかんねえか。まあわかんねえよな。
What do you actually do with this job?
敵を倒す仕事だ。
Well, that's pretty blunt. Who are these enemies then?
国家にあだなす者は全てが敵だ。
Asako, you're really not explaining this very well.
単純に説明した方がわかりやすいだろ。悪いやつを倒す。それだけだ。
Like a comic book hero or something? Are you
全然
Batman?
違うな。
Batwoman?
そうだな。わかりやすく学校のクラスに例えて説明してやる。例えばお前がクラスの連中と徒党を組んでよそのクラスと小競り合いの喧嘩を繰り返していたとして、学校の番長に目をつけられるわけだ。となれば当然のように番長とも喧嘩をする羽目になるわけだ。番長はよそのクラスの連中を集めてお前を敵視する。そしてお前は当然ボコられるわな。そして仲間だと思ってた奴らも早々に負けを認めてお前は孤立する。でボロ負けしたお前は番長に今後一切の暴力を禁ずると命令されるわけだが、そんな条件当然飲めるわけがねえ。でも喧嘩に負けた以上は飲まなきゃいけない。そこでお前のクラスの委員長吉田君の古田抜きじみた手腕によって今後は喧嘩になったら全部番長にお任せしますってことになるわけだが、番長にしてみりゃいつまでも舎弟になったお前の面倒は見きれない。建前上引っ込みのつかなくなった番長は今後は何かあったら俺がお前の代わりに戦ってやる、そんな約束がどこまで信じられる？わけのわからない野郎に因縁つけられて喧嘩になりそうだから番長助けてと電話してみりゃ、今日は塾があるから無理とか言われてみろ。終わりだぞ。そこで求められるのが情報収集力と防衛力ってやつだ。番長に武器を取り上げられたお前、つまりは我が国だが幸いなことに盾を持つことは許されている。つまりは早期解決力として自衛のための武装が許されているってわけだ。ところがまあ厚物に懲りてナマスを吹くって言葉もあるだろう。一度ボロ負けした国ってのは表立って武力を持つことを嫌う連中が増える。つまり武器なんか持ってるから殴られるんだという意見だな。表立った武装は NG。 そもそもそんな金はない。番長に頼りすぎれば自分で蒔いた種は自分で枯れとくる。さあどうする？
I'd have to take care of things myself, but as quietly as possible.
その通り。いいかユジ、この日本って国はな、番長にとっちゃ北側の玄関なんだ。この国からいろんなものを取り上げた番長側がこんなことを言うのもなんだが、国外からの侵略に対する脅威にあまりに無防備な日本において、番長の国を代表とする各協力国の出資のもと、核施設防衛を名目として設立された非公式なタイトル組織があってだな。
Sorry, it's starting to get confusing. I don't really get it. So you're telling me you're not Batman?
ああ、だからどう説明すりゃいいんだ？つまりな、この国を侵略して乗っ取ろうとする国があったとするだろ。そいつらと戦って撃退するにはこの国にはいろいろなものが足りない。
Like an army?
そう、この国には軍隊がない。番長の国から軍隊を送り込むにしても 面倒な大人のルールがあって様々な制限がある。そこで核施設保護の名目で軍隊とは別の組織を新たに設立し、防衛費とは別の金で動かそうって魂胆だ。公的な組織区分としては防衛省における特別の機関ということになる。わかるか？
Is there any simpler way you could explain this? I'm really not getting it.
まあもっと簡単に言ってしまうと秘密警察みたいなものか。地方警察権はないがな。
What's a secret police force?
わからんか。そうか、困ったぞ。子供にわかりやすく説明する必要のない職業だからな。アメリカの NSA とか CSS を知っているか？
The people who make the space shuttles? Okay, Yuji, now you're just embarrassing yourself. Alright, well, hopefully Yuji can get all this explained to him in the next episode of the Labyrinth of Grisaia. Take it easy, everybody. I'll see you then.